Hello, welcome to Brew number 21 with me, Fay, Brew from the Bothy podcast. I don't know if you can see all of the little bits of fluff. They're not celestial beings, it's bits of fluff. We actually have that big bright globe thing in the sky. It's been weeks since I've properly seen the sun. And I've been doing a lot of design work, so there's just fibre everywhere in my studio and you can see it dancing around. It's quite pretty actually. There's one. It's really quite nice. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming and joining me again. Lovely to have you with me for my little podcast. As you can see, I am wearing my jumper. This is my Rihi jumper. I talked about it at length 2 weeks ago with the issues I was having with it, and I've kind of sorted them, and I'll tell you all about how I remedied this jumper towards the end of the podcast, and how I got it to what I would say is a wearable size for me. So I will take you through what I did with that, and also some really interesting findings I have about my jumper sizes and my gauge and what I should be looking for. Interesting for me. Hopefully you'll find it interesting too. Let's dig into what I've been up to in the last couple of weeks, and I want to start with what's off my hook because I started it and I finished it in record time. And this is it's unblocked, so forgive me because it's not looking as fine as it should, but look at that beautiful berry colour. This is my one way or another necktie. Now the pattern covers a cowl, a necktie and a scarf and a kind of bigger shawl, and you can use 100 grams or less. I chose to use 3 20-gram mini skeins from Rivernets. I don't know what Rivernets is, from Rivernets. And this shade I think is Earthy Tomato. I'll pop a link in the show notes for you, but it is done. I know this is my own design and I maybe shouldn't toot my own horn, but I really love the stitch pattern that I came up with. I love how it just plays with the V's on their side and how nice it is. Did you hear clawing there? Do you want to see a little black cat? This is our very deaf kitten. He's actually 16 years old. This is Pom Pom, who's decided that he wants cuddles today. What he might do is then decide that he wants to go out and he wants to come in and he wants to go out. So if he becomes a pain in the backside, he'll get booted out and we'll just have to put up with the cat scratches at the door. Please do not knock over my microphone. You can come down for cuddles. No? Yes, thought so. This is the game we play all day. You get this little shark tail coming in and you might get some pom-pom purrs. Yeah. So I finished off the one way or another necktie in record time because it was only 60 grams and it's a very intuitive thing to crochet once you get into the stitches. It uses an extended double and double slip stitch, and then it's an easy 6-row repeat on the increase and a 6-row repeat on the decrease. And this is a birthday present for my mum, who's pretty good at tying up neckties and stuff, and will find some fancy schmancy way of tying it up, but she just wanted a little necktie, and I've gone slightly larger for her because she will find a nice way of tying it up. Whereas if I was making this for myself, I probably would have stuck to 50 grams or even could have done it with 40 grams. So if you're looking for a really quick thing to make up for a festive present for somebody, then one way or another is a suggestion I've got for you, because you can make a little necktie, potentially even half the size of this with 40 grams of 4-ply. I've also made it in a floof as well. You can do it with 25 grams of floof. So if you've got a random little ball of mohair sat somewhere, you could make up a one way or another necktie. I'll put some other links down below of what I know my most popular patterns are at this time of year, because sometimes people just need a speedy little make and you've got the yarn already sat in your stash and you want to make something with it. So I will make that suggestion. But this needs to be blocked today and ready to head up to my mum for her birthday. And I hope she likes it. I'm sure she will. But we'll try and see. Are you going to behave? Probably not. Why don't you go and chill out on the sofa? I really hope you can hear his purrs over the microphone because they're very loud. He's a very loud boy. Other things that are off my hook that I can now share with you. I had this drop through my door the other day. This is the issue 8 of the Journal of Scottish Yarns. And I have 2 designs in here, one of which I have spoken about at length on the podcast, which is my kin cardigan, which I took you all the way through the design process of every stitch that I ripped out, every mistake that I made, every part of it that I pulled back together to get a design that I was really happy with. It's pretty oversized on these 2 models, but what I love is that one of them is also called Fay. So we've got a Fay design being worn by somebody called Fay with an E, so slight difference. So that is in there. And then I also pulled out, there are a couple of other, well, I love all the designs, but a couple of others, so I was like, oh, I could make that. There is a knitted jumper called the Oxo jumper that I quite like, and on my potential list for next year is to make a full colourwork garment of some description knitted. And then I also really liked this vest, which is Tunisian, that's by Samira Hill. I'm not great at Tunisian crochet, but that I love. I'm not sure I've got Tunisian in me, to be honest. And then the other design that I've told you nothing about, but you can see here, is called the Rocca Cowl, which uses a little bit of crochet colour work. I've done this in DK and it is styled on a rooftop of a building. It's called the Rocamora building in Barcelona, and I stood there for ages looking at this rooftop, and it just really inspired me to make a cowl from it. And you can do all sorts of colour options with it. So I made, this is a longer version, up top is a smaller version that I made, and then Susan, who's the editor-in-chief at Journal of Scottish Yarns, made this more colourful version down on the bottom. So it's quite a versatile thing to make, and again I love the texture that I managed to get into this cowl. It makes it very wearable. The yarn that I used for this was Nervous Fibre, and it was such a beautiful blend. It was very luxurious to work on, and let me just see if I can get what the blend is, because it was really drapey and beautiful, and it sits really nicely around your neck. It was Nervous Fibre 4-ply alpaca cashmere silk sock. And you can do the cowl in DK, which is, sorry, I gave you a bum steer there. Susan's version is in DK and my version was in 4-ply. And yeah, the luxury of working with cashmere and silk was just really nice. It was lovely. So they are both in there. I'll pop a link down below in case you fancy taking a look. This is available in print and digitally as well. Right, so that's everything that is off my hook. I don't have anything lined up between now and the end of the year to get onto my hook. I might, if time serves me well before the next podcast, I might just manage to start on a pair of crocheted socks. But I can't promise anything, so that's why I'm not showing you a pattern or the yarn that I might use, because I'm a little bit under the cosh. I've got three designs to get out before the first week of January. One knitted that I've already made and I need to write up the pattern, a blanket and various other bits and pieces for another set of designs, and also a garment. So I'm just like crocheting like the wind at the moment. So the idea of then having a crochet hook in my hand for the spare time is not filling me with joy. And also I don't want to put that much pressure on my hands because I'm having to crochet for hours during the day. So knitting is a different movement for me. So actually it's restful for me to knit at night at the moment because I'm crocheting sometimes all day long to get through these designs. And if anyone's concerned about me, please don't worry, because I don't get pains. I get up, I stretch, I do wrist exercises, and I can genuinely crochet for hours on end without having any issues whatsoever. And if I get little twangs, then I go and sort myself out and come back to it and give myself a break. But I've built up that resilience in my wrists and my shoulders, and I've found comfortable ways to be able to take on that amount of crafting at any given time. Right, shall we take a look at what is off my needles? I have managed to fire through stuff this last 2 weeks. I've shown you this before. This is my Spiritual Guardian cowl. This one was in West Yorkshire Spinners Fable. And I was making one for my best friend, for Jenny, which I did by holding 2 strands together. One of West Yorkshire Spinners Colour Lab in DK, and Lang Zen, which is a merino silk blend, which is rather lovely. And this just worked up in no time at all. I think it took me 2 or 3 nights to get this done. So one of the reasons I was showing you this one as well is because they are the same size. My gauge is the same for both of them, and there seems to be this like urban myth that using a strand of mohair or floof really makes the project much more expensive. So let me give you some stats on that, because I've done the same pattern, same stitches, they're the same, but obviously 2 different sets of yarn. So the West Yorkshire Spinners Fable one used 156 grams, and so just under £15 per 100 grams. This one cost me £23.32 in yarn. Obviously I've then got some that is left over, but I'm just counting the grams that I have actually used. Stop it. Now he's been naughty. What he really wants is for me to put a cat flap in. Whereas the one that I made for Jenny, which is a DK with the lace weight, this used 117 grams of the DK, 31 grams of the lace weight, so 148 grams in total. And when I look at the cost of those two, it's £17.43. So pretty much there is, come on, do the maths, £6 difference. Is that rare? Yeah, there's a £6 difference. The one with the floof was £6 cheaper than the one without the floof. Now, the one without the floof is a reasonably luxurious yarn, and had I used a cheaper yarn, then yes, it would have been cheaper. But I needed something that had the look of floof about it to put it head to head. Otherwise, I'm not really comparing the 2 textures and fabric types. Can't say fabric today. The 2 textures and fabric types, because having something that isn't as luxurious just isn't a good evidence base against using the floof. So obviously it depends on what you're holding it with. If I was going for a much more luxurious floof, but still Lang Zen I think is about £7 for 25 grams, and West Yorkshire Spinners Colour Lab is, let me just pull up my spreadsheet so I can tell you, is £7.50 for 100 grams. So if I was going with a much more luxurious base of the DK, then yes, it would have been more expensive. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is just to say that adding floof makes it more expensive is not factually correct. You can add floof to make another lesser yarn feel more luxurious, and it doesn't necessarily make the overall thing a more expensive item, because you're using a lot less of the floof than you are of the other yarn. So £6 different with floof from without floof, but using really quite a nice yarn for this one at £15 100 grams. Hopefully that all made sense. So Spiritual Guardian cowl made with 148 grams total, and then I had enough to make a hat for Jenny, which looks teeny tiny. This is called the cable cap, and it is by a designer called Mia Aarstrand. I'll pop links down below for both of them. Now this is based on the fact that my absolute favourite ever hat, which I love and wear all the time, is the same one, but it's done with cashmere and floof. And this is my most beloved hat, and every time I wear it with Jenny, she wants my hat. So I've made her a version that will go with her cowl, that will make her lovely and warm and toasty. It looks tiny, but actually it has an awful lot of stretch to it. I'm just going to get rid of her cat. You are a naughty boy. Come on, let's go. Well, that didn't work, did it? Just clawed to get back in. So this has got quite a bit of stretch to it, and I know from experience with this one that the cables, the more you wear it, the more it stretches, but it will be a little bit tighter. But again, I really love that. Don't love this colour on me, but it's very, very Jenny. She will love it and wear it. And with this, do you want to see it with the cowl on as well? Just for maximum pinkness on me. I mean, she's definitely going to be toasty warm. But this is absolutely what we call Jenny pink. So much so that whenever she visits my house, there's just like pink fluff left in her wake. So this is a very Jenny colour, and I saw her at the weekend and she was borrowing my grey one, and I was watching her wearing it thinking, you don't know that you've got your own version coming. So done. Now I used my original pattern for this that I'd used for my lace weight version, and it was only when I was pulling together the links for the show notes that I discovered that she has a chunky hat version as well, which maybe I just should have looked for. But I translated the numbers from the lace weight into the DK with the lace weight held together, so pretty much an Aran weight, which was fine. But I'll pop both links below for you in case you are interested. Again, great quick makes if you need to fire off some quick festive presents for people. With the Guardian cowl, you can do it with just one repeat if you don't want such a big chunky cowl, and this one it would be quite easy to change the numbers. The hat comes in, I think it's 1 or 2 sizes, that's it, but it's not difficult to take the overall number of repeats down if you needed it for a small person or a bigger person. But very beloved hats in my household, so much so that I think it was last year I lost mine. I dropped it somewhere when I was out and about, and I re-knitted it almost immediately because I didn't want to be without it. Really missed it when I didn't have it. So 2 things that are off my needles, basically. That's 2 Christmas presents done and dusted. You sat there, are you quite happy now? You're going to behave? The next thing that I have, which is on my needle, is a pair of socks for Jenny's youngest boy. He loves handmade socks, hand knitted socks in particular, and he also loves Christmas colours. I offered him 3 different colours I thought he might like, and these were the ones that he has chosen, which I was quite pleased about because it is a newish yarn to the market. It is called Yarnsmith's Merino Sock. This is the Prince version. Now Yarnsmith's is the in-house brand for Wool Warehouse. And I mention Wool Warehouse because although it's a UK based business, they actually post out worldwide. I think they've got very reasonable postage rates, and I know that their postage is generally really quite quick. So if you are looking for somewhere where you can buy a lot of UK British yarns, Wool Warehouse is actually a really good option. They sell quite a lot of British brands in there, but they also have their own yarnsmiths. So this is, I think I said it's called Holly Jolly, and it is 75% merino and 25% nylon. It's got quite a high twist on it. It's nice enough to work with, but it feels almost like a little too soft. You know, when yarn can almost feel a little bit fake and you can't feel the wool with it. That's how I personally feel about it. I'm sure some people will think this is beautiful and soft and lovely to work with if you're like at the softy end. But my absolute preference is always for something that is a little bit more rustic if I'm working with wool. So if I had a choice of working with Yarn Smith's merino sock or working with West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply, I would take West Yorkshire Spinners Signature every day of the week because it really plumps up, keeps your feet lovely and warm, and I just really like it as a sock yarn. We will see how this will fare because in Jenny's household, socks go through the washing machine, they go through the tumble dryer, and it was another good reason for offering up the Yarn Smiths is because it can go on a 30-degree wash and also it can go on a low tumble dry. So there's every chance that these socks might actually survive for a little while. Now, originally I was a little bit miffed because the colour change, particularly when you get to this red section, is so huge. And when I was going to start the second sock, I am definitely of the matchy sock brigade. I love matching socks. I'm not really a fan of like unmatched socks. I just don't like it for me personally. So I generally try and knit and crochet matching socks, but because this colour change was so big, I would have wasted this amount of yarn from here to here, and that just didn't sit well with me. Jenny's youngest often wears different socks on his feet, like from different pairs of knitted socks that I've given him. So he's not going to care that these two don't match. He will just care that he's got a pair of hand knitted socks and he will have very warm socks on his feet. So I thought this was going to be my last festive make for a present that I had to make, but when I was offering him up which yarn he wanted, his big brother basically said, oh well, maybe I would like another pair of socks. He'd previously been too cool for school, 13-year-old, doesn't need hand knitted socks anymore, but actually as it turns out he does want them, and so what I offered him was a pair of black knitted socks that he could still wear to school and nobody would know they were hand knitted because, you know, too cool for school, and that's what he wants. Her eldest bikes to school every day and it's a 20 to 25 minute bike run, so I like the idea that I can help to keep his little tootsies warm and that he can sit with warm feet right the way through the school day. So I now have a pair of black socks to knit in the middle of winter. That'll be fun, won't it? Luckily I have a very good crafting light, so yes, I have another pair of socks that I need to get going with, but it won't take too long. I got this far last night and I only had about maybe an hour and 20 minutes worth of knitting, so they're pretty quick to make. So he's getting them, and then in between Christmas and New Year, our lovely postie, she's so nice. If she sees a car on the drive and she's got a parcel for me, she just comes round the back and comes and knocks on the Bothy door and brings me the parcels. She's just so nice, lovely and chatty, and so I promised to make her a pair of socks. And given that this is West Yorkshire Spinners and the colourway is Green Woodpecker, and that red is a pretty good postbox red, so our postie is going to get a pair of hand knitted socks probably at the beginning of the new year. So I need to get these ones finished. black pair done for Jenny's eldest, and then a pair of socks for our postie as well. I find sock knitting really meditative because I just do a vanilla sock recipe, and I just love that. I call it drilling down because you're just circles and circles and circles of stitches, and I find it quite mind-numbing in a very pleasant way. I don't often shut down my brain. I find it really hard to quieten my mind, and sock knitting and jigsaws are the two things that really do it for me. Jigsaw puzzles, where my brain just goes into a bit of a flow state. So I've got no issues with spending my night times knitting other people's socks who really appreciate them. So you can obviously see that I'm wearing my Rehe jumper. Let me show you how that looks, and then I will talk you through what I did. It's still big, but it is massively better than it was. I got it to shrink quite a lot. In doing so, I also shrunk the arms a little bit, so they're now more of a kind of a bracelet length on me, but I keep on pulling them down and they are stretching out, which is quite helpful. So let me talk you through how I got this to shrink. But you can see it is still quite oversized, but I have learned lessons. So 2 weeks ago, I said that I didn't know what I was going to do with this jumper, and that I thought my two options were to either rip it back and reclaim the yarn, or to maybe try shoveling it through the tumble dryer. Now, the reason I had the confidence to think that it could go through the tumble dryer is because I've done that previously with it was a cardigan that I made for our friend Fraser, Jenny's husband actually. And I had spent maybe 100 hours making this cardigan, and then when I washed it and blocked it, it stretched beyond all belief. And that was made in Cascade Heritage, which I think is 80% merino, 20% nylon. When I took to the internet back then, it told me that shoving it, that sounds really indelicate, that putting it through the tumble dryer actually would shrink it down back to its original form because of the nature of the superwash yarn. So I tentatively put that cardigan through the tumble dryer, and that is exactly what it did. It pilled up a little bit, but it made it still a very usable cardigan. So because of that prior knowledge, I knew that I could probably push this through the tumble dryer in a very delicate manner and get it to shrink a little. Now, this has got alpaca in it, and I have previously experienced putting alpaca through a washing machine and it completely felting. So I didn't want to do that, and our tumble dryer is much more delicate than our washing machine. So what I did was spritzed this using a spray bottle so that it was damp but not absolutely soaking wet. I tested using the same method with the swatch that I had done for this. So I spritzed the swatch and I put it into the tumble dryer for half an hour with a dry towel so that it was tumbling with the towel and it wasn't just the swatch banging against the washing machine. So there was a more careful agitation than just hitting the metal. And I'd measured the swatch before and after, and I felt like the amount that it had shrunk was completely acceptable and would be acceptable if I did the same with this jumper. And so I spritzed the jumper and I put it into the tumble dryer for half an hour, and then after half an hour took it out, and I could see that it was starting to shrink but that it wasn't felting, and all I was getting was a much nicer kind of back to where I wanted it to be when I had been knitting it, and much nicer fabric. And so I took it out, I spritzed it down again, and I put it back in for another half an hour, took it out again, and I knew that I could push it just a little bit further, so spritzed again and did another half an hour. So all in all, this jumper had an hour and a half in the tumble dryer with a towel again, so it was getting a more delicate tumble, not just bashing against the metal, and also that it wasn't always the heat of the metal on the moistened jumper. And that is what led to the yoke coming back up. I don't know if you can remember last time round, it was pretty much at the top of my rib cage. So the yoke is zipped back up, which means that the underarms are further up. And the only issue that I really have is that it's still massively oversized and the arms are a little bit short, but I can work with that. I don't mind, because I just wear like a longer sleeve and use it as a bangle length, or I'll keep on manipulating it. But that tumble dryer has got me back to a jumper that I want to wear and have worn quite a bit since I got out the tumble dryer. It's a good slouchy jumper. Wear it in the house. I've worn it out a few times, and I probably would also wear it up hills as well, because the other thing that the slight shrinking has done is, although it's still got loads of drape to it as a fabric, actually it's nowhere near as holey as it was. So I've got a really nice, quite a dense fabric, but it's still got a lot of movement in it. So I'm pretty happy with where I got to on this. Now, one of the most positive things to come out of this is that I'm even less scared to listen to the little naughty imp on my left and to just say it's yarn, and I really enjoyed the experience of making it and shoving it through the tumble dryer and seeing what happened in quite a controlled way, but still taking that risk and being that daring. I have a lot of dare in me. I don't really shy away from stuff, and I really don't mind taking the leap and going, let's do it. Like, I have a real naughty streak in me that just says, sod it, let's just do it and go and try it. So that's one of the reasons that I don't really mind the fact that I shove this through the tumble dryer, because what's the worst that can happen? I make it smaller and I end up making a cushion cover out of it. But actually the most positive thing that came out of it was that it made me think about the jumpers I really enjoy wearing, what the style is, what the fit is, what my favoured gauge is. And I went to Marks and Spencer's a few days ago and I tried on a load of different styles of jumper, and I'm going to pop some of them up here while I'm talking just so you can see. So I literally ram-raided the store and found raglan, found modified drop shoulder, yoke jumpers, and some pieced elements as well, and I tried them all on across different size range. I tried one that had loads more material coming round at the waist, just for a laugh, just to see how a proper tent would look on me. So having tried on all these different styles of jumpers and found the right sizes that I thought looked best on me, and I took photos right the way through so that I can keep on reminding myself of it at future dates. I also discovered that my favourite size gave me roughly an 8 to 10 centimetre amount of positive ease. So I have a full bust of 114 centimetres, and the jumpers that I was liking the most were about 122 circumference to about 125 in circumference, and that was what looked best on me if it didn't have any waist shaping and it was just coming straight off the full bust. If it was a raglan or a modified drop or a drop, then they were the ones that looked best on me. So what I will have shown you within the photos are some of the horrendous ones. You'll see me with like my thumbs down going, absolute no. And then the ones I really liked. Now, when I went shopping, I did it in one of my favourite jumpers, so I had that as a reference point as well. And I measured that jumper when I got to the end of them all, and that jumper was also in that golden ratio with 8 centimetres of positive ease. So I could do the same thing and go through my wardrobe and find my jumpers that also fit into that, but I feel like I've now nailed that. And I know that my best looking jumpers now are raglan, modified drop, then drop, and a yoked jumper is okay on me, but it's not my favourite thing to wear. So, unless I put waist shaping in, I think. So basically, as much as I am loving colourwork jumpers, I think there aren't that many yoked jumpers in my future. And what I maybe need to look at are raglan or drop sleeves colourwork jumpers instead, because a yoke is okay, but it doesn't suit me as well as other styles of jumper, and I think I need a slightly more fitted form to feel really good and comfortable in it. So I'd thoroughly recommend, if you have got a large department store in and around you, go with a measuring tape. Be prepared to take a trolley load. I had to go in and out of the changing room 3 times because I was only allowed to take 8 items in at a time, maybe 9. And I tried on that many different items just to see what worked. And there are definitely forms that flatter me more than others, and there is like this golden ratio that I now understand. So next time I'm looking at designs I want to make, I know that 8 centimeters of positive ease is like 8 to 10 is like really the most that I want to get in across my full bust. So if a future design doesn't sit in that ratio for me, it would now make me question whether or not I go with that design or not. So really helpful information that I think will carry me through with a lot more confidence into my next load of crochet and knitting garments that I make. So yeah, genuinely helpful. Let me know if you end up doing the same. And now, if you're in the northern hemisphere, now's the time to do it, because the shops are absolutely full of woolen wares, of jumpers of all different shapes and sizes. The only one that I didn't find that I really need to try is a saddle sleeve jumper, but they're just not as popular in the shops at the moment. So at some point I will do the same method when I come across a saddle shoulder, but that's the only one that I think is pretty much missing out of my arsenal. But 8 to 10 centimeters, and then I can also carry that information into my design work as well, which is genuinely helpful. So we've got, where are we now? It's Wednesday the 10th of December. We're so close to the festive period, and I have got quite a lot of work to try and get through between now and then, but we're also very close to the winter solstice, which is a real turning point in the year for me. I love it when we get to the longest, like the shortest day and the longest night, and that flick switches in me, and like my positivity moves up a beat as well because the daylight's coming. I'm hoping that the weather's going to be really good, because if it is, I'm planning for us to go and take a big walk up on the Roaches and maybe get the sunrise of the shortest day and be up on the hills when we get that sunrise. Maybe go and get breakfast up on the hill as well, take the Trangier with us and experience that. So if we manage it, I will show you the sunrise of the shortest day of the winter solstice in the podcast on the 24th. So I am here on the 24th. I might record a couple of days early just because it's festive season and there's a lot going on, but I will be here, and I'm not sure how much stuff I will have to show you. I might have had to record those little bits and pieces in advance as well, so it might be a bit more of a bitty podcast, but I definitely will be podcasting. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is what my intentions are going to be for 2026. Some of the things I want to work on, learn, some of the techniques that I really want to bed myself into next year, and really what my intentions for the coming year are going to be. And also I might take you through, depending on timing, some of the projects that I'm trying to finish off or rework going into the festive period, because this doesn't feel like the time to be starting big projects. This feels like the time to make sure that I'm finishing things off and creating a clean slate for the 1st of January. So I will be back on the 24th, potentially with a slightly different format of lots of little bits and clips, but I will be back. As ever, thank you so much for coming and spending time with me. I will see you in a couple of weeks' time. I am waving!